Hello and welcome to May's Crochet. I am Rachel, and if you are just here for the tutorial, please skip to the timestamp that editing Rachel is going to put below. Otherwise, enjoy my introduction. I have incorporated crochet into books and into film now, two of my big hobbies, and I thought, well, you know what? It's time for the third hobby. And it's not gaming in general, but it is absolutely 100% The Sims franchise. So a few days ago, on February 4th, The Sims celebrated its 25th birthday. So it came out in the year 2000. I was a freshman in college, and my roommate Whitney, her boyfriend, I believe, downloaded it on her computer, and the obsession began. Addiction, I don't know, call it what you will, but I have not been the same since. Now, I played a lot of video games when I was a kid, but most, all Nintendo stuff, but this was something on a whole new level. And I know a lot of people just say that there's no point to the game, and they are more or less right. You can make a point if you want, but it has become an absolute staple in my life. So we are now up to The Sims 4, which has been out for 10 years at this point. I have all 4 games on my computer, and The Sims 3 will always be my favorite. The open world concept, the ability to customize literally everything, still my favorite. Unfortunately, because of the way it's built, it is very buggy and prone to crashing and lagging. But, we get what we get. So I've discovered crochet and The Sims don't really meet up that much. That Venn diagram, those circles barely touch. There wasn't a lot when I Googled it. So I decided to celebrate The Sims 25th birthday by making a Plumbob plushie. It's not really a plushie because I didn't use blanket yarn, but yeah, whatever. So these are Plumbobs, if you didn't know, and they are above the Sim's head of whichever Sim you're playing at the time, and depending on their color depends on how they're feeling. When it was Sims 1, it was just basically, are their needs being met? Food, sleep, bathroom, hygiene, all that stuff. So green is the best, down to red, which means they're about to die, basically. As the games have evolved, they can have all their needs green and met, but they could still be in a bad mood because of sadness or embarrassment or tension or something like that. So the game's a little different, but the Plumbob is still absolutely essential to let you know how your little bit of code is doing in their own world, and it is definitely part of the logo of The Sims, always has been. Anyway, I decided this week that I was going to buckle down and actually make a pattern for a stuffed Plumbob. Now, technically, it is not the official Sims Plumbob because those are 12-sided. There's 6 around up top and bottom. And I tried that the first time and it looked absolutely ridiculous when I got it all together. It was too big. It was definitely misshapen. So I cut it down to 4, and that's what this tutorial is going to show. So here's my tutorial on how to crochet a Plumbob. Also, this is my first attempt at doing a tutorial, and so if the camera's not 100% in focus, or if I trip over words, or I made anything confusing, I'm really sorry. Please be gentle. I tried my best. So for this project, you will need just under 200 yards of 4-weight acrylic yarn. These are little mini skeins that are about 65 yards a piece, and I was able to get almost 3 full triangles out of them. 3.5mm hook, stitch marker if you choose. It helps me keep track of where I am on the triangle. Yarn, needle, scissors, obviously, and just like a buttload of stuffing. All right, so to begin, we're doing a slip knot on our hook. We're just going to chain 2. Don't worry about how long the tail is, just as long as you have enough to tie it off on the inside once everything's done. So we're going to go into the second chain from the hook, which is this one. However, I like to do mine in the back bumps. It's just something I've gotten in the habit of doing. It really doesn't matter, especially for this project. So we're going to put 2 single crochets, or a single crochet increase, in the second chain from the hook. Okay, then we chain 1 and turn our work. It's very difficult when it's this little, but anyway, then we turn our work, and then we do 2 rows of single crochet just in those 2 stitches. So that's 1, 2, chain and turn again. 1, 2. See, very tight. Not tight, just small, just hard to work with. Anyway, so we're gonna chain again and turn the work. And now we are going to do an increase in both of these stitches. So then we'll have a total of 4 single crochets. And then we're going to chain 1 and turn our work again. And we're going to do 2 more rows of just single crochet, no increase, just 4 single crochet in both rows. So we're going to chain again, turn the work, and now we're going to increase into the first stitch, 2 single crochets, and then in these next 2 stitches, a single crochet each, and then the last stitch, another single crochet increase, so 2 single crochets. So now we're up to 6, and we're going to chain 1, turn the work, and then 2 rows of single crochets, no increases. Alright, so now we're up to 6, and for the stitch marker, this is a personal choice I have. I'm going to go ahead and turn the work and do my next increase row. So increase the first stitch, 4 stitches, get a single crochet, then increase again at the last stitch with 2 single crochets. Okay. So I get distracted very easily, and I put my work down, or I look up and then I look back down and I lose track of where I am. So I like to put a stitch marker on what will be the front of my work, and this will be the front of my work because I will be ending on an even row, row 30, because once I get up to 20 stitches for the base right here, it'll be row 30, it'll end over here, this will be the front of my work. And now all I have to do when I put it down, I just looked to see where the last increase was, and it was right here. And now I know that I need 2 rows after this last increase. Because honestly, I don't always pay attention. And this just helps me. You may have another way of doing it. You may not be as easily distracted as I am. So if I just pick this up, if I put it down and I don't know what I'm doing and I pick it up again later, and I can see here is my increase and I have 1 row above that increase, so I know I need a second row above that increase. So I just finished my second row of single crochets after I increased up to 8 stitches for what will be my base. Now I'm going to continue doing this. Increase and then 2 rows, increase and then 2 rows. So every 3rd row is an increase up till I have done 2 rows past the increase of 20 stitches, which should be 30 rows altogether. Now you can do fewer rows for smaller Plumbob or more rows for larger, obviously, but if you want to keep it the same as me, going up to 20 stitches at the base and 30 rows altogether for 1 triangle, here's the pattern just in case you need something to keep up with. So I'm going to finish up this triangle and I will meet you back to continue. All right, and we're back with 20 stitches across what will be the base of our triangle. It should be 30 rows down. Here was my 20 stitch increase row and then 2 rows past that. So this is the front. I can remove this now because I'm no longer increasing and I don't have to worry about it anymore. But we are now going to work up the sides and put a single crochet in each space per row, 1 single crochet per row. So first I'm going to chain, and now I'll go into this one right here first. It is very hard to see because it's tight, but I will put one in each spot. So there should be 30 single crochets going up the side. All right, so here I've just placed one in what is the second row. I'm gonna go in for the first row, and then I'm gonna go up into this tiny spot at the top, which is where the chain would be. Put a single crochet, tighten up, single crochet, chain one, and then put another single crochet in that same space, and keep going down the other side in the same way. So I will finish up this side. See you back in a minute. And we're finishing up this side by going another single crochet here. Oops, yarn is splitting. It's not the best, but it was the best green I could find that I liked. And then, so that would be the last row, and then I also put one in what would be this stitch here without any kind of chain. So we have single crochets all the way around, because even though this is low sew, we still have to seam everything together. So next we need a very long tail that we're going to use to seam up the triangles together. So for the first one, I highly recommend that you just chain about 45, because you will be going into about 30, 31 separate stitches. I'm not going to do it right now. But anyway, once you've chained up to however many, then you can cut at the end of that and then frog it back, and then you have that length. Once you have the first one, then you can obviously just measure it against another one. So that's what I'm going to do now, because I've already done the work. If I can get it right. There we go. But even though this is low sew, we still have to seam things together. So this is all the yarn I had left over. And we're not going to pull the yarn out through, because we are going to seam these up like next to each other like this. So we want it still looped. So once you've made one triangle, you're going to do it 7 more times. So next I will show you how to seam them together. As I said, this is low sew, but lots of seaming together. So now we're going to take 4 triangles and turn them into a pyramid. And you will need 2 pyramids to sew together in the end. Okay, so we are going to seam up these 2 sides, and then we'll just add the other 2 around. And since we ended our triangle down here when we put the single crochets along the side of the triangle, we are going to take this yarn that we did not pull through, because now we're just going to chain. And then we're going to turn, and we're going to seam these together in the back loops of these single crochets that we did up the side of the triangles. So these are the 2 loops, and we're going in this back one. This is the one closest to us. This is the back one furthest from us. We're going to do that on both sides. So this is the one closer to us. This is the one furthest from us. So we're going to go just in the back loops, and we're doing a slip stitch. So it'd be best if you threw your working yarn kind of that way behind the project. And okay, so we chained 1 here. We're going to go into this back loop right here. And then we're going to come over to this side of this other triangle, and that chain where we finished the 20th stitch on this, and then we chained and we went up the side. We want to find that chain, and it should be right there, right as it turns. So it's not definitely on the side, it's not definitely on the bottom, it's right there in the corner. We're going to go in the back loop. Now, getting these started is always the hardest part for me, but I seam things together a lot using this slip stitch back loop only method, and this is no different. So go in through the back loop, pick it up on the other one, yarn over, and then just pull through. Again, yarn over, pull through. I really hope this is picking up on camera, because this is my first tutorial. So back loop, yarn over, pull through those 2, back loop, yarn over, pull through those 2, back loop, yarn over, and then pull through those 2. So I'm going to do this all the way up to the top, and then I'll show you where I stop to avoid extra bulk. All right, so I'm getting close to the top. I'm only a couple of stitches away from where I'm going to finish. And again, back loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 of those loops on the hook. And I'm going to do one more on each side. So I should be ending where we had that chain at the top to turn and work back down the other side. So what was the beginning chain, we put a single crochet, we chained one, and then we did another single crochet all up here before we came back down here. And so I am not going to put one in here. I'm not going to slip stitch these two together. These should both be those chains. I'm not going to slip stitch because it adds extra bulk, and we're just going to sew all that closed at the end. And that'll be the only sewing we do, will be the two ends. So now I will be pulling my yarn through. And it will get a little hard with all these extra bits hanging off, but I like to leave them until I'm ready to sew everything up, or until I've sewed everything up. So now we're going to come back and grab another triangle and do it again on this side. All right, so this is where we left off when we finished the triangle. We're going to chain and then turn back around, and then this stitch right here, not the chain, but the stitch, hook through the back loop and come over here, and where we did the turning chain after we finished this last row. Sometimes it's hard to find, but this is it right here. Throw my working yarn that way so it doesn't get tangled up. Okay. And then back loop only, yarn over and pull through all three of those loops that were on the hook. And then same thing. Back loop, and then through all of those with a slip stitch. Anything more would create an uneven ridge where one side would be a stitch and the other side would be the back side of that stitch. So I am going to go ahead and finish up attaching all four together, and then we'll close up the pyramid. So we're going to flip it over, and it's the same thing, only we're going to close it and make sure we're seaming up the outside of what will become the pyramid. So again, just chain in that last one, and then you start slip stitching in the back loop on each side. Nothing different. Oops. So I'm going to keep working up this side, and then we will meet back up at the top, and we'll close all this off. I just want to make sure that you knew that you were slip stitching everything together on the outside. Hopefully you knew. I'm sure you're very smart and you knew, but just in case. So we'll meet back up here at the top to close everything off. So I'm almost up to the top, and I have a really great example of what happens when the number of stitches on each side does not match up. Now, if you catch every row going up and down the sides with single crochets and with all the chains for turning and everything, you should have 31 going down each side by the time you're ready to piece these together. However, I have messed up somewhere. It happens. I'm not going to pull everything out and figure it out because I just don't care. And if you're new to crochet and you find yourself screwing up, I know it's so easy to get down and be frustrated and hate the idea of pulling things back. So I am just going to throw in an extra stitch to fix it. I'm not going to pull anything back. I'm just going to keep going because this really doesn't matter. If it's clothes or maybe a blanket or something that would be more noticeable, sure. But this is at the very end of what's going to be a plushie. Nobody cares. I know I don't. So there are a couple of options to fix this. I have this chain at the very top that I wasn't going into. I was leaving it open to keep a lot of bulk from when I sew it closed. But that is an option. You could always still use that chain. Nobody's going to notice. It's going to be sewn all together by the end. However, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in on this side into this back loop. So I'm going up to the next chain on this side. I hope everybody can see this. And then I'm going to go back into this one that was already used for a stitch. And then pull through. Hopefully nothing splits or messes up. It has not had a lot of great luck. Ooh, woohoo, we got it. All right, so now here's this top chain right here at the top. 1, 2, and then over here, here's this top chain at the top. 1, 2. So now we're matched up. So there's a couple of options that you have so you don't have to pull all the way back, because I know how awful frogging is, especially in the beginning when you're starting out. And all you want to do is make something and get the project done and have fun. And it doesn't always work out. So this should be my last one. It's harder to see at the top because everything is tighter with it being closed. But this is my last one. So this is my top chain with nothing in it. My top chain over here with nothing in it. so we can pull this yarn through. So make sure all your other loose ends, there should be 7 other loose ends altogether from the beginning chain and then the end of the slip stitch all the way around. So we're just going to use one of those to sew around, and the other should be on the inside, and we'll tie them off after we've sewn everything closed. And I don't really have a fancy way of doing this, so have at it. Just whatever you think will work to close it off. You don't want it completely flat, so do a few stitches with everything facing one direction, and then kind of open it this way, and then do a few stitches with everything going a different direction, and you can do that a few times. Pull it tight, check it to see if there's any spaces. These will pull down in a second. These are from the seams earlier. They're on the inside. We're going to pull them down and tie them off. It looks pretty good, in my opinion. Pull this other tail end down onto the inside. All right, now we're going to flip it inside out. Since this is the inside of a toy, I am just going to tie them off into knots. We've got 8, that's 4 knots. I'm fine with it. Like, if you have another way of making it nice and neat, that's fine. Nobody's going to see this on the inside. But just make sure you pull the ends, because those on the outside were sticking up a bit. Make sure, just pull them really tight. Make sure there's nothing that would stick out on the other side. And then just tie them off. I usually do 3 knots to be extra safe. Pull it tight. And then cut. Okay, that should be my last snip on that side, and that's all the sewing we technically have, just the 2 ends of the Plumbob. So now we're gonna, of the Plumbob, sorry. So now we're gonna turn it inside out, right side out. We're gonna turn it right side out, and we have our 2 little pyramids that we're gonna put together. And now comes the hard part. Okay, so before you start seaming the 2 ends together, I do recommend you start stuffing down into here, probably at least halfway up. It will make it easier in the long run. But this is the hard part, because it would seem like these 2 turning chains where you turn to seam up the sides of the triangles would be the best place to join. That's a lie, because the seam goes this way on this one and then this way on this one. So they're actually going in opposite directions, and they will end up off by like a stitch. So there's some preparation and counting that has to go into this. Really, you have to finagle it to make it work the best for you. I have had to pull back several stitches, frog them, and then try again several times this past week in working this pattern. But I'm gonna get these partially stuffed, and then we'll start seaming them together to the best of our ability. Okay, so I thought I was recording and I wasn't, but I just gave a little tip of starting with smaller amounts of stuffing to get down into the tips of the pyramids, instead of just doing like a giant chunk and then just keep building on top of that, because otherwise it doesn't really get down and fill this out as much. And then if you don't notice that until it's completely closed, it is hard to finagle some of the stuffing down in there. So start with a little bit at the very ends and then just build up. I'm about maybe a third, a little over a third of the way stuffed with these 2. So now we're going to start seaming them together. Again, we are doing slip stitch in the back loop, though when we get to these edges it'll be a little trickier because we've got some extra stuff here and we have to figure out exactly where we need to go to make these line up the way they're supposed to. And that's why this part is my least favorite. But I am actually going to start a couple of stitches off from our first meetup of these seams. So if I want this slip stitch to go here, we'll count this as 1 and 1. So we'll count like 3 back. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, and hopefully that'll line everything up. And we may have to adjust things as we get closer to other ones too, again. And if it doesn't work, pull it back and adjust it until you get it the way you need to. And you may have to do it at all 4. I definitely had a lot of problems earlier this week when I was practicing, so. do what you have to do to make it look good. And this is hard too because the stuffing wants to start pushing the pieces apart. So getting a tight stitch is hard, but you don't want it too tight because we're going to go back around with some more slip stitches later. So this part is really tricky and I do not like it, but here we go. Another slip stitch. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the side of this chain and we're going to go into the top of where this turning chain was on this triangle. And hopefully this works out. So now we want this turning chain and we're going to put it with this one over to the side. And it's going to be tight and it's going to be difficult to get the hook through where you want it, but we also kind of want to hide these chains as well because they do stick out a little bit. So we're going to put it right in here. It's not technically a stitch, but we're going to make it one. And hopefully that lines everything up. We do need to get a couple stitches beyond where we are to verify that it does line up, but let's see. So once you get a couple stitches past it, look at it, make sure it's where you want it, and that looks pretty good to me. So we will get close to the next one. And then if we have to adjust things to make these two line up, we will adjust things to make those two line up. Okay, so we're approaching the next lineup, and if we want this to go in here, we have 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, we can make that work. And let's see, we're a few stitches past. And that looks pretty good as well on that second one. Okay, so I'm just going to keep working around until I get time to close. Stuff as you go when you can. It does want to fall out because there's nothing holding it there. I will meet you back when I am almost ready to close. Just keep lining up those seams and stuff as you go. All right, we are just a couple of stitches away from the end. It is very difficult at this point because of the stuffing. I know the hook will sometimes grab the stuffing and start pulling it out. It's just crappy. Like, I'll admit it. It does suck, but we are almost there. One more stitch. I hope this is in focus. All right, so we are closed off. We are back to the beginning. However, I am going to do slip stitches around this joining chain right here that we just did because, and you can quit now if you want, but to me, I don't feel like this stands out like this because it's going along with the stitches this way, so it kind of just blends in and we don't get that ridge as much. Whereas I feel like with this stands out, and if we go around one more time, then this stands out a lot more. So I'm going to do that. If you want to quit here, quit here. It's your business. Up through this first slip stitch and just slip stitch again, and then up through this one, slip stitch again, slip stitch again, all the way around until we get back to where we began. Okay, so now we can cut off the yarn and weave in the ends. So don't need much. Pull this through. Okay, so here's, it's so hard to get all this on a rounded thing. Okay, so here's my first one. I'm going to go through the bottom of it, at the top, and then through the last one. So here's the last one, through the last one. Now it looks like there's another stitch there. I'm going to just hide this and bring it back out here. Do do the same with this beginning one. Come on. Still a little knot there, but that's okay. Anyway, we're just gonna tie them off, knot them together, and then just shove that knot inside and cut off any excess, and that'll be it. Shove the knot down in with some loose ends. You don't want to tuck those all the way in, just cut them off. And that's it. Here is a green Happy Mood Plumbob. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I have a feeling it's going to be very niche. Like I said, crocheters and simmers don't really seem to run in the same circles very often. But if you crochet and you know somebody who loves The Sims, then like maybe you could make it for them. I don't know. Just saying. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube things. Happy birthday to The Sims, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!